Hey everyone, so this is for my final project for our game engine class, GAM 475, and so the first item of interest is that we had to create at least four different primitive objects. In my game engine I have four, and as you can see here I have the cubes, the pyramids, spheres, and cylinders. So those are my four different primitive objects. As you must have also noticed that I have different cameras set up. So if you have an overview, I have one focusing on the cubes and each of the primitive objects. You can walk through each of the cameras by pressing WASD to move forward, and that's basically the position, and then you can rotate the camera by using the directional arrows. Another neat feature that I added is that you can iterate through each of the game objects by pressing G, and it'll just focus on that specific game object. So right now I'm using 5 different shaders, well, 4 different shaders technically, because the wireframe uses the color by position shader, which are these two right here. So I have the color by position shader, the const color shader with the point light, the flat texture, the wireframe, and then the texture with the point light. So if you can just see, and some of them are skewed. This is scaled differently to show that it can be scaled. This cube is rotating, and then the others are different. So another requirement that we were supposed to do is that we're supposed to swap through textured for textured objects. So if you press T, you can swap through the textures. If I go here, I can't swap through this. If I go to the next one, I can, and so on. Let's see the other requirements. So yeah, I have it instanced at different locations. I have a total of 20 objects. Talked about moving the camera. So I'm using I'm drawing with an index buffer object. So if I go here, I'm drawing the index buffer, and each of the models basically simply has a list of indices and a list of vertices, and they're written to a file at first, and then right now I have defined the write data to file as 0, so it's not going to write to the file, but it's going to write the file. If I go here, I have the Azul files for each of the models, and it's just going to read this in our main game application over here, where it creates it, reading the file that is located in the source folder. So going through this, I'll just go through this too. So I set up the cameras. I have a camera manager, and I basically add all the cameras to my camera manager. I load in the models. I set up the different shaders. I add the textures, and then I create the graphics objects, and then using only one game object, I instance it, and I create multiple game objects for the cubes, for the pyramids, and for the spheres and the cylinder. I also have a scene graph, and in my output window you can actually see, make this bigger, you can actually see the scene graph working here. So I added the camera manager and the game object manager to the scene graph root node, and basically it lets us know all the objects that are in the scene, the game objects and the camera objects specifically. So moving on, I loaded the objects through a file. The textured is a separate file from the actual model file. The model file includes the vertices and the indices. So I'm showing different 4 shaders. I use wireframe, texture with flat, again, wireframe, texture with flat, texture with the point light, const with the point light, and a color by position. I showed you my scene graph. And I showed that so the textured models can iterate through the textures by pressing T. I can also delete a game object by pressing the delete button, and I can delete as many as I want. So again, pressing delete to delete the currently selected game object. So I do support multiple cameras, and the transitions are simply just to move between cameras. There's no real cutscene. I wasn't really able to implement these features where freeze resource only if the texture reference count is 0. I wasn't able to implement that. And I wasn't able to implement a reference counting system for the number of objects using specific textures. But I do have my texture class, which manages very loosely the textures in the scene, or that is utilized, if I can find it. So yeah, in my texture manager folder, I have my texture class, and it basically has a texture, the name of the textures, and it can add textures, and it can delete textures, and it can find the specific textures. I also have methods that I use to swap and set the min and mag filter in the wrap modes. So in terms of the demo, that is all that is required. I guess this is just a simple overview of what we're going to be doing in our next game engine class, where we're going to add more abilities to play around with more graphics. So hopefully that's everything then. Thanks for watching.